Hey everyone, it's the Caped Clinician, and recently I was watching some previews for The Outer Worlds 2 with my girlfriend. In this video, we learned more about the character customization, the combat, the story, and the companions of the game. Now, I've played the original Outer Worlds, so I kind of knew what to expect, but for my girlfriend, this was her first exposure to this series, so I thought it was going to be really exciting for her. But the more that we watched, the more hesitant she seemed to become, and ultimately, she turned to me at the end of the video and said, "I don't know how much I'm going to enjoy this." What I was most surprised by was how unsurprised I was. In fact, I was in the exact same boat as she was. So today I figured out why this is. Today I'm going to tell you why good games are cursed and how we can fix it. But to start solving this problem, we first need to go to the source, the developers themselves. Let's talk about development times and the change in expectations over the last 2 console generations or so. Nowadays, it's really common to wait years, maybe even half a decade or more, for a sequel to your favorite game. Think about Marvel's Spider-Man. While we did have Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales between the 2 main games, there was a 5-year wait between the beginning and the continuation of Peter Parker's story in the Insomniac Spider-Man universe. But this isn't just limited to those big-budget PlayStation games. On the Xbox side, there was a 6-year wait between Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Infinite, and we all really know how that turned out. Now, this might seem like a commonality nowadays, just something that we've gotten used to, but the fact of the matter is, it never used to be this way. There are a number of reasons why people criticize Xbox nowadays, and for good reason. They've had so many PR disasters, and quite frankly, they're not what they once were. And yet, there are so many fans begging for the old days of Xbox to return. So Microsoft must have been doing something right at some point in Xbox's history, and at some point they must have lost their touch. But really, it's not just an Xbox problem. What if I told you it was something bigger? In Gen 7, that was the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, we had so many games coming out at such a high frequency. Don't believe me? Well, all 3 Gears of War games in the original trilogy came out on the one console, the Xbox 360, and we didn't just have the one Halo game. We didn't just have 2, we had 4 huge Halo games come out on the Xbox 360. Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, Halo Reach, and Halo 4. Not only that, but we also had Halo spin-offs like Halo Spartan Assault. One of my favorite PlayStation franchises of all time is God of War, and in fact it's a franchise that I love so much that I made one of my best friends at medical school just because of how excited we were about God of War Ragnarok, and we even went to read up about Norse mythology before we played that game. So how about God of War then? Well, we had God of War 4, or simply called God of War 2018, in 2018, and we had God of War Ragnarok follow up 4 years later in 2022. So that's 2 games in 4 years. Not too bad, right? Well, actually, it's a little bit worse than the typical output for God of War. The original God of War came out in 2005, with a sequel only 2 years later in 2007, and the final installment of the original trilogy in 2010. So with just 1 extra year, we got another God of War game. 3 games in 5 years, compared to 2 games in 4. So okay, you might say it's not just an Xbox problem, maybe it's also a PlayStation problem, but third party is fine. Well, actually, you'd be mistaken. The original Mass Effect trilogy, a masterclass in sci-fi RPG storytelling, each one of those games of the original trilogy came out on just the one generation of consoles, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. So how is that possible? How did we used to get so many games in a little period of time? And more than that, these weren't just good games, these were excellent games. They defined a generation and inspired legions of fans that still clamor for the good old days to come back even now. Well, it's actually quite a simple answer. Iteration. These sequels used to be iterative. For example, Gears of War saw the introduction of new enemy and weapon types, and they updated the fidelity of the graphics, but nothing completely revolutionized the formula. Gears is Gears, and that's why people love it. It's the same with Halo. Maybe Halo Reach pushed the bar out a little bit more with armor abilities, but Halo was still Halo, and that's why people loved it. But we didn't complain back then in the way that people complain now, about the graphics not being good enough, about the game simply not being transformative enough. But why did it not bother us back then? Well, it's a simple quantity problem. The expectations were lower because we got these games more often. We didn't expect things to change that much in only 2 or 3 years because we knew that it simply wasn't possible. So maybe the reason why we complain is because of game prices. Ultimately, game prices have gone up, and so we're paying more now than we used to. What if I told you that actually isn't true? Not by a long shot. Well, let's talk about Halo again, because we've spoken about Halo a lot today. Halo 3 released at a price of $59.99 in the United States in 2007, which is the equivalent to $93.24 today. But despite this, Halo 3 set records by having the highest grossing first 24 hours for any entertainment product in US history at the time of its launch, making $170 million. Any entertainment product. That means games, movies, and any other kind of entertainment you can think of. Halo 3 broke all the records. Now in 2025, the economic climate is admittedly very different, but people are up in arms about price rises to $70 $70 and maybe even $80, despite them paying equivalently more than that only 2 generations ago. So it's not just a quantity issue, it's a quality issue. People simply don't mind paying more for a better quality product. Sure, there are limits, but so many people are willing to shell out $80 or even $90 for GTA 6, and that's a game coming out next year. But you have to prove the quality first by building brand loyalty, and that takes a couple of things. The first is frequency of release. By putting out games frequently, you put your series on the map, you build a loyal fan base, and those people are eager for your next product. And the next thing is constant communication. It's not just enough to have good games coming out frequently, people also want to hear from you, the developer, about what's going on, about the culture at the studio, and about the big developments that you're making for your next product. In a way, the biggest hype cycle aren't the flashy trailers, it's just constant little drip feeds of information that get people speculating and talking about what could be going on with your game. It's so common these days for developers to push out a game, then go dark for 4 or 5 years, come back with a flashy new trailer, and when the game finally drops, it's just a little bit of an iteration on what came before. That's not to say iteration is bad. Of course, as we spoke about, iteration is actually quite good, but when you're waiting 4 or 5 years for a sequel, you want it to transform the experience. As I was planning the idea for this video, SkillUp, a channel that I follow very regularly and that I really love, put out his review for Ghost of Yotei. Listen to what he had to say about this release.
Ghost of Yotei is exactly what I had pleaded for Sucker Punch to not make. It's Ghost of Tsushima again, but with better visuals and a way worse story. We'll do the full review, don't worry, but that really is the strapline. If you've played Ghost of Tsushima, you have already played this.
So that kind of sounds like what we were talking about, right? But then what makes 2025 games stand out? Because there are some really excellent releases this year, and the fight for Game of the Year is, well, I mean, it's obviously won by Clair Obscur in my opinion, but there are some other contenders like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Death Stranding 2 on the beach. What does SkillUp have to say in this same review that aligns with what we're talking about today?
If you enjoy these sorts of open world games, then Ghost of Tsushima didn't have any flaws that needed to be fixed in the sequel. The only place Sucker Punch could go was innovation, and there's just none of it here. And imagine where Sucker Punch could have taken Yotei. What if it had adopted the curiosity-driven approach of something like Hell Is Us? What if they had a script as strong as Clair Obscur? What if it had adopted the decision-making and consequence of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2? I'm not saying that Yotei should have had all of these things, or even any of these specific things, but just something, right? Like something to hang its hat on.
So there it is, plain as day, the good game problem. We want games that are original, fresh, and radical. We want them to stand out, but our desires are outpacing the developer abilities to make games at that speed. And this isn't just limited to the classic IGN 7. In my opinion, the IGN 8 can be like a pity point, a AAA pity point to say, this would be a 7 out of 10 game, but because it's got some good graphics and it has a lot of money behind it, we'll give it an 8. It's like the difference between a Lego house and a rich tapestry. A good game has lots of decent elements, like coming back to the Outer Worlds 2, it's got some decent character customization, some decent combat, maybe a decent story and some decent companions. All of that is decent, or maybe even good, but it feels modular, like all of these separate pieces are put together, but if you look close enough, you can see the divisions between these Lego blocks. It's still just a game made of its constituent parts, but an excellent game is a rich tapestry where everything is woven together and the boundaries just fade away. Think about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Those characters feel so real. That writing that SkillUp speaks about is so poignant and so powerful, but it's not just limited to the story. Those characters express themselves in gameplay, and they even have dialogue in gameplay. You really connect with these characters every step of the way. That's the difference between an excellent game and a good game. That's what makes something feel fresh, radical, and worth your money and time. So we've identified the good game problem, but it's not enough to identify something, we have to fix it. And here's how. Well, first of all, developers everywhere need to take more of an indie approach. Smaller teams, more ideas, but less bureaucracy. There needs to be a vision decided upon before the game is made, instead of making loads of things and then cutting half of it and feeling like you make an incomplete product in the end. Guillaume Broche, the game director of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, used to work at Ubisoft, and he said that if he wanted to greenlight that game at Ubisoft, it probably would have taken about 25 years. Now, he wasn't being specific, but that's the point. The bureaucracy needs to go. The second thing is reusing assets more. Iterative iterative sequels aren't bad, you just need to make them fast enough. And a good way to do that is reusing assets. Be more clever about the way that you do it. Change the assets ever so slightly so it doesn't feel like just a glorified DLC, as some people will complain about, but still, reuse, reuse, reuse. It saves a heck of a lot of time. The third point, less graphics and more innovation. Graphics are great, but we're at a point where we've almost hit a peak. Characters look more photoreal than ever, and environments essentially do look like real life. So we don't need to push the boat out any more than we already are, and in fact, some games just don't need that level of polish. What we need is innovation. We need games that feel completely different to play, that we can talk about for years to come. And our fourth and final point, give big franchises to multiple developers and let them reinvent your franchise. A good example of that is Prince of Persia. That's had the Rogue Prince of Persia come out recently, and Prince of Persia The Lost Crown. Now, it's a crime that the developers of The Lost Crown were shut down, but we had a Prince of Persia experience for different kinds of players. Like roguelike games, the Rogue Prince of Persia is your way to go. Like Metroidvanias, then play The Lost Crown. It reinvented the Prince of Persia series, and more people got into it than ever before in this generation of gamers. So there we have it, the good game problem and the good game solution. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and feel free to subscribe for more weekly videos. For behind the scenes and bonus content, check out my Patreon, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.